have moved now here in Sydney Park and we are at a new location. Where are we, Pratiti?
So we're at the Sydney Park AIDS Memorial. What you have behind me is a sandstone sculpture, and this site is a reflection area that was set up to commemorate LGBTIQ people who had passed away because of the AIDS epidemic. How this sort of site came about is quite interesting and an important bit of community history, if you like, I think. So I was saying earlier that this Sydney Park used to be a landfill site, and it was converted into a park through a lot of community effort. So in the 1990s, so 1991, a group called Peace was approached by the Sydney Council, by the City of Sydney Council or South Sydney Council, I can't remember, one of the two at the time. And they had been doing a bunch of re-greening work in the eastern suburbs to introduce native vegetation. And they began doing the same here on this former landfill site. And they worked with community groups, with residents from the local area, to carry out plantings of native trees. Initially, they were not very successful. What was happening is you had methane left over in the soil, and that was burning the roots of the plants, essentially. And so it required multiple efforts over a period of a decade and a half, where you had annual and potentially more than annual plantings of trees. And over time, as the soil changed over, they were successful in introducing native vegetation. And it's why you have what you have now, where you have this sort of quite awesome piece of green in the middle of the city, and it's a site for birds to come over. It's sort of attracted that native wildlife, which is great. Now, part of that community effort, you also had people from the LGBTIQ community who participated. So there was a person called Manny DeSax, who was a care worker, and they had been trained, and there was a group of volunteers who were actually trained, I believe, to care for people who were dying from AIDS. So we're talking about the early 90s. This was at the peak of the AIDS epidemic. A lot of young people were dying. And one of the people that Manny was caring for passed away, and that was quite an overwhelming experience. And they wanted something to commemorate this person and commemorate the people who had passed away from AIDS by. And so I believe Manny approached the council at the time in 1993 and to set up a memorial. So there was a similar one in the Blue Mountains, and I think there was one in Washington DC that was similarly commemorating LGBTIQ people who passed away from AIDS. And I think it was May 94 that the council agreed. And so you had members from the LGBT community who were part of this larger community planting process. And they've set up their own group and began to carry out plantings, and I think 37 at least have been carried out up until 2014. And at least 8,000 trees have been planted as a consequence, which is pretty amazing. This site, as I said earlier, is really a reflection area that is part of that broader grove. And the bricks that we're actually sitting on right now are bricks that were rescued from the kilns. That speaks to the former history of that site. So again, you have this layering, this physical layering of place that comes to, make this site what it is. Yeah.
So again, as urban geographers, we think about all those layers that come together to a particular space and make it a place full of meanings, full of histories, full of experiences. And obviously it's actively visited, so it's making more layers as we speak. Thank you very much, Pratiti. We go to the next site?
Yeah, thanks. We're on our way now.